Welcome back on to CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Satish Pai, Vice President of Aluminium Association of India, is joining in to take us to the outlook of the sector, and my colleague Nigel D'Souza will take us through that interview. Nigel, over to you.
All right, thanks so much for that, Kritika, and thanks so much, Mr. Pai, for joining in today to give us a sense about what's going on in the aluminium industry. Let's get a few details first, sir. If you could give us what exactly is the current aluminium capacity in India, and also could you tell us in the next 1 year, including the upcoming capacities, what is that number likely to go to?
Yeah, I think, currently the installed capacity of aluminium in India is 4 million tons, of which about 60% is actually being utilized. So I think that over next year, with Vedanta ramping up Jharsuguda, you will see us reaching close to that 4 million ton installed capacity.
All right. So also could you tell us, what is the total demand that we have currently? Capacity 4 million tons, as you told us. What is the current demand that we have domestically, and how much of the demand is being met via imports?
Yeah, so India last year consumed in the whole fiscal year about 3 million tons of aluminium.
Okay.
And if you remember what I told you, only 60% of our capacity is being utilized. So we produced about 2.4.
Right.
Now, what has happened is that 50% of that demand is being imported. So we have about half our consumption of aluminium being imported.
Okay.
When we have sufficient capacity to produce aluminium in India, so some amount of the aluminium we produce is actually being exported as well.
All right. So what is that number? How much of our aluminium is being exported? Are there any subsidies that you are getting currently for exports? Could you give us a sense about that? And also in terms of imports, you're talking about 1.5 million tons that are being imported. What are the products that are being imported?
Yeah, so let's take that imported amount. So about 1.5 million tons is getting imported into India.
Yeah.
About 850,000 tons of that is scrap.
Okay.
So quite a lot of scrap gets imported into India, and the remaining part of that is coming in terms of primary aluminium, rolled products, foil, which is sort of what we call downstream. So more than half the imports is scrap. Then the next largest amount is what we call unwrought aluminium.
All right.
That's primary aluminium, and the remainder of that is value-added products.
All right. And what about exports? Do you get any kind of subsidy for exports, and how much of our total production is being exported?
Yeah, it's about 700 KT or 700,000 tons of our production is being exported. And yes, the government does give us incentive to export to certain countries. So quite a few countries, we get about a 2% incentive when we export as from some of the government policies that they have in place.
All right, let's get to the main issue then, Mr. Pai. The DG has recommended a 5% duty that is likely to be imposed if it's accepted by the government. Is that 5% enough? Because I remember that in the past, you all have been talking about 15 to around 20%. So is that 5% enough? And also, could you tell us what were you all hoping for? What's the current price difference? If I'm selling domestically and if an import is coming in from China, what is that price difference?
Yeah. So, to be fair, we have been always asking, as you rightfully said, about 15 to 20%. Now, the government has in the last budget increased the duty on aluminium from 5 to 7.5. So we got 2.5% more duty. Now, the important point is that in that same budget, the green cess on coal went up from 200 rupees a ton. It actually doubled to 400 rupees a ton.
That's right.
And 40% of the cost of production of aluminium comes from power. So really that 2.5 increase in duty got negated by the increase in cess on the coal.
Right.
So as a part of the overall procedure, the Aluminium Association had applied for safeguards. That safeguard is, as you said, the DG safeguard has now recommended for a safeguard of 5% on primary alone.
Right.
Our request was for the whole Chapter 76, which means primary as well as value-added products. So we wanted the safeguard on all the aluminium products. So the government is considering 5%. We would actually like it to be more like 15%. But, I'm sure the government will take the right decision.
All right. So what is the price difference then, sir, domestically, if a domestic user, consumer is buying aluminium, and if he's importing it, what exactly is the difference? Is it $100 per ton? Is it $150 per ton? What exactly is that difference as things stand now? You can give us a bit of a range as well.
Yeah, I think that, it's not really the difference between imported versus domestic, because aluminium follows a London Metal Exchange price.
Right.
The point of the Indian domestic producers is that most of the imports are coming in from Middle East and China, which provides subsidies to their producers, especially for power and transportation. And hence, we have a handicap compared to the Middle East and Chinese countries, where the government is providing subsidies to the production of aluminium, which puts domestic producers like us in a handicapped position. So really what we are trying to say is that that difference from that subsidy should be made up in terms of this import duty or safeguard. Because the price of aluminium sold, we would like it to be then at an even keel. Because the price is dependent on the London Metal Exchange plus a local premium.
All right.
And what we are asking for when you put a 5% safeguard is that it gives us the makeup for the subsidy that the Chinese producers or the Middle East producers are getting, because they get cheaper power.
All right. Thanks so much, Mr. Pai, for joining in. One final question. You're pushing for anti-dumping duty or countervailing duty?
Yes, we are actually, a whole range are being considered. We have filed for anti-dumping on foil, and that is in progress. And we are also, the Aluminium Association is considering filing for CVD, countervailing duty as well. So a number of initiatives are in the pipeline, which we are considering.
All right, Mr. Pai, thanks so much for joining in. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. We look to touch base with you in the near future and get a sense of what exactly is happening. So that's it from me, Kritika. Over to you.
Thanks for that, Nigel. So clearly we have a detailed perspective of the kind of price difference and the kind of outlook that the Aluminium Association is looking at. We'll